Welcome everyone. Welcome to your second online practical classes. Last week you had your cuts of vegetable class which was shown as a demo to you, and this week we start with the first menu of the semester 1. I know online practical classes are a bit confusing as to how we go ahead and how do we do it, but during these tough times it is the only way to go forward. In these classes we will show you how to work in the kitchen, and this is your basic training kitchen in which we are working and recording the videos. In the classes to come, when we show you the online videos, the whole menu, how it is to be made, how it is to be done, we will be showing it to you the way you are supposed to do it when you come to the college when the physical classes start. So, initially what we will be doing is we will be showing you the whole ingredients, then we will be segregating the ingredients, and post segregation we will tell you what is the plan of work for the day. Plan of work is very important, because when you work in the kitchen you cannot work haphazardly. You need to have a plan as to what dish is to be made and what dish is to be kept for later. You have two gas ranges at your disposal. A good plan of work means that both the gas ranges are occupied at that time with the right ingredients and with the right dish. The basic funda behind using the plan of work is that during your exams you will have around 6 dishes to make alone. So, when you are making it alone, you need to understand which one to start with, which will take the maximum time, and which can be finished towards the end. So, that is the reason why plan of work is very important. We will send you across a plan of work in the emails also, which you can refer to, and you will have to write down the plan of works in the future. This is a good practice, because as soon as the physical classes start, we will be going full force ahead with the practical classes. Okay? So, yes, so this is the first menu for today that we will be making. The first menu for semester 1, we are going to make 3 dishes. We will initially begin with lesser dishes and then move on to more number of dishes as the weeks pass. The first dish that we are making today is a soup. It is called the minestrone soup. Minestrone soup is a specialty soup from the country named Italy. Okay. And as we have already discussed during the lecture of soup, that a specialty dish is something which is like native to that particular country. So, when we say minestrone, the minestrone that we are going to make today is going to be the basic minestrone that we make. This basic minestrone will have your different vegetables, will have your stock, and then a garnish. So, after the minestrone, we have something called as egg Florentine. Egg Florentine is an egg dish which can be used as a main course as well. Florentine over here is a term that you need to remember very well, because Florentine means the presence of spinach. Okay. So, today will be the second dish that we are making is an egg Florentine. It is a baked dish. So, after the egg Florentine, the third dish is an accompaniment. So, here we are making a potato preparation which is called as parsley potatoes. What is the parsley potatoes, how it is made, we will be showing it to you as the class proceeds. This is how you are going to get your trays when you come to the class. You are supposed to come in early and make sure that all the vegetables are available on the tray and they have been segregated properly. The main reason you need to come early and help the attendant set up the tray is that you can understand that whether any vegetables are missed out, and if you have read the recipe properly, you know that all the vegetables are available here. Okay. And we are making 3 dishes, so we have 3 separate plates for segregation. So, each plate will be for each dish. So, maybe the soup, the egg Florentine, as well as the potatoes. For the soup, we take the cabbage, the tomatoes, the celery. Now, the celery has some leaves and stalk in it. What we need to do is that we need to actually use only the stalk of the celery and not the leaves of the celery. So, we will be discarding the leaves of the celery. So, you just need to pluck it out like this and discard the leaves and only use the stalk. Make sure that the leaves of the celery are quite fresh. This will determine the freshness of the celery on its own. Celery is one of the most important vegetables. It is included in the mirpua, and it is also a very aromatic vegetable which gives the flavor to the whole dish. So, you will discard the leaves and you will use the stalk of the celery as it is. Then we have a turnip. This is a leek. Leek is a vegetable which is very aromatic, and it comes from the onion family. When we go ahead, we will see how the layers of the leeks are. The carrots also go in the soup, so it can be kept on the plate of the soup. Garlic over here goes in two dishes, that is your minestrone as well as your egg Florentine. So you will have to divide the garlic into two, wherein you will keep few for minestrone and few for the egg Florentine. The macaroni goes in the minestrone, so you have to keep it aside. This is your basil leaves. These basil leaves are grown in the college itself. The best part about the basil leaves are that they are so aromatic that they have their own aroma and it gives out a good flavor to the whole dish. So that is why you need to use basil leaf carefully and you cannot overcook them. Because they are grown in our garden, if you see there are some black spots over here. Yes, these black spots are because we don't use any pesticide and we take care that it is organically grown. The eggs will go for the Florentine. So there are 4 eggs, which is 2 per portion. And because this is a Florentine preparation, obviously you will be using the spinach as well only for the Florentine. The third dish is your parsley potato. So these are some baby potatoes that you get in the market. Baby potatoes are also known as parsley potato because they are used majorly for making this dish. So these are some baby potatoes which is used in the parsley potato preparation. And obviously parsley goes in two dishes, that is your minestrone and the parsley potatoes. So the majority of the parsley goes in the parsley potato plate and the rest go for your minestrone. You can still see that the onion is not kept in any of the plates. The simple reason being that the onions are being used for two dishes, that is for your minestrone and your egg Florentine. So instead of keeping one onion each, as per the requirement of the dish, we will be dividing this onion into half and putting one half each in each of the dishes. So one half goes in your minestrone and the other half goes in your egg Florentine. This is the segregation of your menu for today. The first and the most important thing that you'll do as soon as you come to the class is you'll dampen one of your dusters and put it on the table like this. On top of this, you will keep your chopping board. The reason why we do this is when you keep it on top of this, the chopping board does not tend to move. Whereas, if you remove off the duster and you keep the chopping board as it is, it tends to move a lot. So that is why we need to place the duster before and then keep the chopping board on top. As per the plan of work, the first thing that we have to do is start cleaning the spinach. The reason we do this is because spinach cleaning takes a lot of time and a lot of efforts as well. So a bunch of spinach like this will take anywhere between half an hour to 45 minutes to finish off cleaning. So that is why we need to do it the first. Okay. You will never cut or chop anything on the table. You always have to use a chopping board. This is a kachra bowl in which you will throw all the kachra that is accumulated on your table. So you throw out the twain first and then you take each leaf and then you start cleaning it. This is a vessel to store the spinach. Now if you can see, this is the vein of the spinach leaf. So what we need to do is we just need to remove the leaf of the vein and discard the vein. The reason we are doing this is because the vein is very fibrous and we do not want that to come in our dish. So again, just remove the leaf from the vein and discard the vein of the spinach leaf. Cleaning of the spinach is different from your other vegetables because the spinach is cleansed in different changes of water rather than in flowing water. So what you have to do is you have to basically fill up 2 pots of water, 2 pots with water and then clean the spinach. So what we are doing over here is that in one pot of water there is spinach already inside. We will clean it up with our hands and then make sure that all the dirt and the dust which is there in the spinach leaves settle to the bottom of the pot. Then post that we'll shift only the leaves onto the second pot of water. While we are doing this, what happens is that all the dirt and the dust and the mud from the spinach settles down onto the bottom of the first pot. Just picking up the leaves, you put it in the second pot of water and then discard the first pot of water. You will have to do this in 3 changes of water. Why do we need to do this in 3 changes of water at least is because so that each level eradicates one layer of dirt or mud which is present. Again mixing it up with the hands and then making sure that all the dirt is settled to the bottom. Just pick up the leaves from the top. Spinach leaves tend to float on water, so that is why it is pretty easy to get this step done. In the meanwhile, while this is being done, you also need to make sure that there is a pot of water kept on the gas so as to blanch the spinach leaves. Towards the end, when you are done with the 3 changes of water, you will take a colander and you will transfer all the leaves to the colander. This is the way how you clean the spinach leaves. Rather than just running it through the water, you have to make sure that you clean it in 3 changes of water. The next is the preparation for the parsley potatoes. For the parsley potato, what we will be doing is, first we will be cleaning the potatoes. So, we will take a colander and put the potatoes onto the colander, take it to the sink, and then we need to clean the potatoes. The potatoes cleaning is pretty simple. First you need to pass all of the potatoes through water and then you need to individually scrub all the potatoes. The simple reason we are doing this is potatoes has a lot of mud as it grows on the ground, okay, and we need to get rid of any spots that are there on the potatoes. Then only we will be able to use the potatoes for a parsley potato. Okay. Switch on the water a bit and then scrub the potatoes using your fingers. Make sure that there are no black spots, dark spots, and if the peel, even if a little bit of the peel comes out because they are quite tender, it's all right. Towards the end you need to segregate out and then make sure that you clean out the potatoes like this. Always remember to put it on the colander so that there is no water left behind which can damage the potatoes. For the blanching of the spinach, you need to keep a pot of water which is highly boiling, and then to add to that you will add in your spinach. Make sure to press down on all the spinach leaves so that it cooks evenly, and as soon as you press it down, maximum amount of time required to blanch a spinach on high flame is anywhere between 10 to 15 seconds. Then to remove the spinach from the pot, you take it to the sink and then you just throw out all the water with the spinach into the colander. After this, there is one major step that you need to do, that is the refreshing of the spinach. What do you mean by refreshing of the spinach? What we do at this point of time is we run water through the spinach so as to make sure that there is no carryover cooking that happens. If there is any carryover cooking, if the spinach gets overcooked, what will happen is it turns very dark green in color and it destroys the flavor and the color that is present in the spinach. So, you make sure that you run cold water or normal room temperature water through the spinach so as to stop the cooking process. So, from hot it needs to turn room temperature or cold in seconds. To take a lot of time, there is a possibility that the spinach will overcook. One more important thing that we have to do is we have to drain out or strain out all the water that is present in the spinach, because this water will spoil the flavor of the dish and it might end up thinning down the flavor in the dish. For the boiling of the potatoes, always remember that the potatoes are boiled in normal water and it is gradually the heat is increased. So, you will put the potatoes in normal water, you will add some salt to the potatoes so that it can be flavored properly, add more salt to ensure that the potatoes are salted well, and then let it boil. Now, we prep the vegetables for the egg Florentine. For the egg Florentine, the first thing that you need to prep is the garlic. What you will do, as we have shown you in the previous video itself, you will press the hard part of the garlic onto the chopping board and that will break the bud of the garlic, and then peeling becomes really easy. In this way, you will peel the garlic and keep it ready for chopping. Again, press the hard part, that is the bud of the garlic onto the chopping board, and then you can easily peel off the garlic. Now, for this chopping of the garlic, you can crush the garlic underneath the knife and give it slices and then turn it around and chop it again. So, you are basically cutting the garlic into slivers and then chopping it up. You need to make sure that the garlic is chopped properly and finely, because if you have smaller and larger chunks of garlic, the possibility of the smaller chunks getting burnt is very high, and at the same times the possibility of the larger chunks remaining as it is also high. Make sure that when you're following the chopping and cutting process, you follow one simple rule. That is, you either go ahead or you pull backwards. Like here you can see it's either going ahead or pulling backwards towards yourself. Never do the up down motion as it is, which causes a lot of sound. What happens is the chopping is not fine and you will be ending up destroying the blade of your knife. So make sure that the blade of the knife is always on the chopping board and you move it in a very rhythmic fashion. At times you might feel that the knife is too big to be used for chopping up garlic. So at that point what do you do is you take a smaller knife, that is a paring knife, and then you can chop up the garlic with that also. You need to be really careful because the smaller the blade, the harder it is to use. But if the ingredient to be used is as small as garlic, it is quite easier and it is quite better to use it. Make sure that the garlic is chopped properly, and then if it is not, just run the knife over the garlic once again. When you are done with the chopping of the garlic, you transfer the garlic onto a plate. Make sure that you have a plate ready at your disposal for keeping the ingredients that needs to be used for a dish. Always remember, chopping board you do not store the vegetables, because if you store the vegetables then it becomes difficult to chop the other vegetables. Now moving on to the next, that is the onion. You cut the head and the bud of the onion out and then you peel the onion. While peeling, if it's simple to remove it with your fingers, you can do it with your fingers, or else you use a knife to remove the peel of the onion. Make sure you wipe down the chopping board so that there are no black spots which are there on the chopping board, and if there are any black spots caused by the bacteria, make sure you wipe off the onion as well. Now you will start chopping the onion as we have already shown you in the last cuts of vegetable video. You slice the onion first at an angle, and if there are any layers coming out, make sure to place them back from the place they come out. Slice it at an angle so that the whole onion is not cut and is not divided in layers, but just so that you can start chopping it properly. Make sure to place all the layers back so that you get an evenly chopped onion. Now give two cuts on the middle so that you can finely chop up the onions, and then start chopping off the onions. Once it becomes difficult to hold the onion, just tip it over, take the pieces that have gone astray, and then chop up the onions once again. You need to make sure that the onions are also finely chopped for the same reason mentioned before with the garlic. Again, once the onions are chopped, you remove them off the chopping board and put it onto the plate which is designated for the eggs Florentine. Now, in the meanwhile, the potatoes have been boiling. Let's take a look at the potatoes. The way to know how the potatoes are cooked is that you will pick up one of the larger potatoes from the batch. You insert a knife into it. If the knife goes in quite easily, that means that the potatoes are cooked. Then you switch off the flame and take it to the sink so as to remove all the water for the potatoes. Always remember, for the potatoes you will never refresh them. The simple reason being because if you add more moisture to the potatoes will take in all the moisture and it will become mushy. Now we move on to the chopping of the spinach for the egg Florentine. Remove any excess moisture or water that is left behind and make sure to mold it in a way that it is easier to hold and easier to chop. So mold it in your hand to a roundel or a barrel shape and then go slicing on the spinach. Once you slice all the way through, you just hold them all together and then turn it around and then again start chopping it up. Make sure that the spinach is chopped properly because larger chunks of spinach means that it might affect the whole texture of the dish. So run your knife through the spinach once again so as to make sure that the spinach is finely chopped. If you have removed the moisture, there will be no problem in following this step. But if there is any moisture left, then there is a possibility that the spinach will tend to stick to the chopping board, stick to the knife, and you will not be able to get a proper finer chop. Run your knife one last time so as to make sure that they are all finely chopped. And put it on the plate in which you have put the chopped garlic and chopped onions. Now, for the blanching of the tomatoes, you need to remove the eye of the tomato. Holding the knife like this, you will insert the knife at one end and then you will just turn the tomatoes. So this removes the eye of the tomato. You can discard that and then do the same for the other tomato as well. Put the knife in and then just turn the tomato. Once the eye of the tomato is removed, you will turn the tomato and towards the bottom side of the tomato, you will just give it a crisscross. This is very important because while peeling the tomatoes after the blanching, it becomes pretty easy if you have this crisscross. Now we move on to the peeling of the potatoes. The potatoes need to be peeled when they are hot so that it becomes easier in peeling them. Because these are small baby potatoes, it takes a bit longer to peel the potatoes. Always remember that you need to remove each and every peel and make sure that there are no spots left on the potatoes. Keep peeling and make sure to remove the spots which are there. Again, need to peel it when it is hot so that the peeling becomes easy. Now, for the blanching of the tomatoes, you need to keep a pot of water and then you will drop the tomatoes inside when the pot of water is hot and boiling. You will put it inside for 10 seconds, give it a swirl like this and keep a pot of cold water ready aside. As soon as the 10 seconds are up, you will pick up the tomato and put it in the cold water. If there is no cold water kept aside, the tomatoes will keep cooking, continue cooking for a longer period of time. Now onto the peeling of the tomatoes. Through the crisscross side, using it as a guide, you will peel the tomatoes. It becomes quite easier to peel the tomatoes if you given a crisscross, as it makes sure that the peel comes out and you can peel it easily with your fingers. If you blanched it properly, there will be no problems in peeling the tomatoes. Make sure to get all the peel of the tomatoes, as the peel of the tomatoes are not edible, and this, if it goes in a dish, it creates an unwanted texture in the mouth. Now, for the cutting of the tomatoes, you will cut the tomato into half. If you feel uneasy using the bigger knife, you can use the smaller knife and cut the tomato into 1/4. You have to make sure that you get rid of the core as well as the seeds from the tomato. We want a seedless piece of tomato that can be used for the chopping. Make sure you get the core as well as the seeds. Cut it off and discard the core and the seeds. Do the same thing for the second tomato as well. Cut it up into 1/4 and then discard the core and the seed. If the seeds are stuck to the tomatoes, take it over the kachra bowl and with your fingers just slightly tip off the seeds onto the kachra bowl. Now after the seeds and the core are removed from the tomatoes, make sure there are no seeds on the chopping board as well. And then you move on to the chopping of the tomatoes. For that, again you cut it into slices first. The nearer the cuts, the finer the tomatoes will be. Line them up properly, turn it, and then start chopping up the tomatoes. Make sure that the tomatoes are finely chopped, because the rest of the vegetables for the minestrone are also chopped quite finely. And if the tomatoes look really good, it brings out the design of the minestrone very well. Now, for the minestrone, what you'll do is you'll finely chop the garlic and the parsley. The cabbage, carrot, turnip and celery needs to be chopped into fine dices. This is a leek. For the leek, you will discard the top leaves of the leek and then you will use only the bottom half. In this also, you need to remove the bud of the leeks. If you can see here, there are some layers in the leeks that will be clearly visible when we cut open into the leeks. Once we cut open, we can see that there are different layers in the leeks. Make sure there is no dirt or anything stuck in between the layers. Okay, and the outermost part of the leek can be discarded because this is normally at times dehydrated and do not have a proper texture to it. Cut the leek into manageable piece and then start slicing it up. Make sure you keep all the layers together because there will be a lot of layers of leeks that will go astray. Chop it up finely like we normally do for onions as well. In the minestrone, the beauty of the dish lies in the cuts of the vegetable. So make sure that each and every vegetable is cut properly and is cut uniformly so that it looks beautiful when presented on a soup plate. Once the leeks are cut, they can be kept with the onions that have already been chopped for the minestrone soup. Now for the making of the minestrone, you will take a saucepan. Make sure that there is no water in the saucepan, just wipe it off once with a duster. You will add approximately 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil, and to that you will add some chopped garlic. Always remember that adding chopped garlic to cold oil increases the chances of the garlic not getting burnt. So once you've added the garlic to the oil, make sure that the temperature of the oil comes up, and then when the garlic starts spluttering, add in the onions. We do not want to brown neither the onions nor the garlic, so make sure that you are only sauteing them up for a few seconds so that they turn translucent and not brown. After the onion and the garlic are sauteed for a few minutes, you will add in the carrot and the turnip. And again saute for a few minutes. Once the carrot and the turnips have been sauteed for a few minutes, you will add in the celery and the leeks that we've already chopped up and kept. Saute the celery and leeks for a few seconds. Do not saute them for a longer period of time as they tend to burn quite instantly. Once they've been sauteed for a few seconds, you will add in water to the whole dish, and you will keep it on a medium flame so as to let it boil. This will aid in cooking the carrots and the turnip with the onions properly. Make sure while you're cooking it, you keep it on a medium flame and keep on stirring the saucepan in between to ensure that none of the vegetables get stuck to the bottom. Once the whole soup comes to a boil, a proper boil, you will add in some salt and then you will add in your macaroni pasta. The macaroni pasta takes anywhere between 6 to 8 minutes to get cooked properly. So keep it again on a medium high flame and then let the pasta cook. Once 6 minutes are passed, just check the macaroni once. If they turn translucent, that means they've cooked properly. Once the pasta is cooked, you will add in the cabbage, and because the temperature goes down, the bubbling also reduces. Ensure that the bubbling starts again, the boiling of the whole soup starts again, and once the soup comes up to a good boil, you will add in your chopped blanched tomatoes. Do not overcook the cabbage and the tomatoes because it will spoil the whole texture to the dish. Add in the tomatoes and switch off the flame. Mix it up properly and keep it aside. Your minestrone soup is ready. Now for the eggs Florentine. You take a saucepan and add a bit of olive oil to it. Again, we follow the same process of adding in the garlic to the cold oil and ensuring that the temperature of the oil goes up with the garlic. Over here also we do not want to brown the garlic or the onions, so you will not saute it for a longer period of time. Saute the garlic. As soon as the oil comes up to a temperature and the garlic starts sizzling, you add in the onions. Add in the onions and saute the onions till the time the onions turn translucent. Once the onions have turned translucent, you will be adding in the chopped up spinach. So take the chopped up spinach, break it up with your hands and then add it to the onions. The flavoring for this dish over here is your nutmeg powder. Nutmeg powder should not be used a lot. Okay, only a pinch of nutmeg necessary to flavor this dish. So a pinch of nutmeg powder goes in, mix it all up together and add some seasoning in the form of salt. Now we move on to making the white sauce for the Florentine. For the white sauce, you will take 20 grams of butter, melt it up properly, add in some flour once the butter is melted. The proportion remains the same, it is 1:1:10, wherein 1 is the part of butter, the other 1 is the part of flour and 10 is the parts of milk. Once the butter is melted properly, you will add in the flour to it and you will make the roux. Cooked mixture of butter and flour is called as roux. So, once the flour is added in, make sure that you whisk up the butter and the flour together and make sure that it does not stick to the bottom of the pan and start burning. Using a spatula, ensure that there is no flour stuck to the sides of the saucepan. If there are any parts of flour that is stuck to the sides, make sure you remove them and get it to the center of the saucepan. Again, start whisking it so that the flour cooks properly. Once the roux is cooked properly, you will take the saucepan to the side and add in the milk to this. This is a very important process that you keep whisking, because if you do not keep whisking, the roux will form lumps and that will result in having a lumpy sauce. We need the sauce to be smooth and proper, so that's why it is very important to keep whisking at this point. The sauce will start thickening once you keep it on the flame and make sure that the flame is low to medium. Use the spatula again to make sure that there are no lumps stuck to the sides of the saucepan. Whisk it up properly so that the sauce thickens up, and as the sauce thickens, you will see that the sauce starts bubbling from one side. Make sure that the flame is on a low so that there is no bubbling in the sauce. A properly prepared white sauce will coat the back of the spoon and you can easily form a streak. Because we are making it into a cheese sauce, we will be adding some cheese into it and keeping it ready for the egg Florentine preparation. You will have to add in the cheese when the white sauce is still hot so that the cheese melts into the sauce and makes it ready for the egg Florentine. Now, for the egg Florentine, you will take a vessel or a bowl in which you are going to serve the egg Florentine and grease the bottom of the bowl. This will ensure that the spinach does not stick to the bottom of the bowl and it comes off easily when the customer is having it. On the bottom layer, you will spread the spinach that we prepared and kept, and you will make sure that it is flattened out properly. Because if there is more spinach on one side and less on the other, it does not give the proper feel or the texture of the dish. Spread it out evenly. Make 2 small holes in the spinach so that the eggs can be placed properly in the small holes. Now, break open the eggs onto another bowl. This is to ensure that if the eggs are not fresh and they are not good from inside or they are spoiled from inside, you can discard it from the bowl itself rather than adding it to the spinach and having to discard the whole spinach. Carefully drop the egg white first, followed by the egg yolk. The egg yolk needs to sit in the holes that have been created for them. Do the same with the second egg as well. Break the egg onto a bowl and then carefully tip over the egg whites first, followed by the egg yolk which goes inside the hole that have been made for them. This indentation will help the egg yolk stay in one place and will make it look good. Now season it with some salt and add a little bit of white pepper powder. Now pour the prepared cheese sauce on top of the eggs and make sure that you cover up all the egg in this process. Evenly pour the cheese sauce around and make sure to cover the egg yolks properly. Once the cheese sauce has been added, ensure that it is spread out evenly and then finish it off with a layer of grated cheese. The cheese also needs to be added evenly so that the browning of the cheese happens properly under the salamander or inside the oven. We will place this whole bowl as it is under the salamander so as to make sure that the cheese turns brown and the egg Florentine is ready to serve. Now put it under a salamander and let the cheese turn brown. Once the cheese turns brown, you need to remove it off the salamander and that indicates that the egg Florentine is ready. Moving on to our accompaniment, that is the parsley potato. You need to take a saucepan, put it on the flame and you need to add a bit of butter to it. The butter should not sizzle on the pan as soon as you've added it. If it starts sizzling, it means that the pan is of a really high temperature and the butter will start burning soon enough. So keep it on a low flame and make sure that the butter melts through and through and does not sizzle and start burning. Once the butter is melted, you will add in a bit of seasoning. This ensures that all the potatoes get the proper seasoning, that is the salt, and none of the potatoes are left behind. Add very little seasoning right now because already during the boiling of the potatoes you've added a lot of seasoning. Add in the potatoes and keep tossing the potatoes for few seconds. Once the potato gets covered with all the butter, you will add in the finely chopped up parsley that you've kept ready. This whole process will not take more than 30 seconds. The potatoes need not brown, they just need to get coated with the butter and the salt that is added in the saucepan, and then add in the parsley, the finely chopped up parsley, and then toss it up. Make sure that the parsley evenly coats all the potatoes that are there in the pan. Switch off the flame and your parsley potatoes are ready to serve. Now for the gremolata, you will take the basil leaves, keep it one top of the other and cut it up into chiffonade. Like we've already shown you during the cuts of vegetable, you have to place one on top of the other, roll it up properly and then give it thin slices. This is called a chiffonade. A gremolata is a mixture of basil, cheese, chopped garlic, a little bit of olive oil. Once you cut the basil into chiffonades, you cannot store it for a longer period of time because chopped basil reacts with the oxygen in the air and it gets oxidized quite quickly. So this has to be done towards the end, just before service. So the basil gets mixed up with the cheese. You add in a bit of finely chopped garlic and mix the whole thing up, making into one proper gremolata. Make sure that you mix it up properly and the garlic and the basil is evenly divided amongst the cheese. For a bit of flavoring, you will add in few drops of olive oil. Mix it all up together, and once it forms one nice mass, a single mass, you will start dividing it into smaller portions which can be easily plated onto the soup. With both the hands, round it up into small balls and keep it ready for plating of the soup. Each plate of soup can contain anywhere between 2 to 4 small balls of gremolata. This is to ensure that you give a different dimension to the whole dish, as well as you give a good flavor to the dish as well. Make sure that the cheese is tightly bound with the basil, so that the basil does not come out before you start plating the soup. In the meanwhile, make sure that the soup has been kept on the flame for reheating. Right now you will keep the soup on a low flame for reheating. For the plating, you will first place the gremolata on the soup plate. And then follow it up with piping hot minestrone. Make sure that all the ingredients, that is the pasta and the vegetables, are evenly distributed, and at the same time you make sure that the water or the stock which is present in the minestrone is also added to proper amounts. The final garnish for the soup is finely chopped parsley, which is put at the last moment just before the soup goes out for service. Make sure there is no dirt on the side or the rim of the plate, and if there is any parsley or anything stuck on the rim of the plate, clean it up with a tissue paper. Your minestrone is ready. For plating of the parsley potato, as soon as they come off the flame, you just take a spoon and plate the potatoes. It can be a bit tricky to plate the potatoes because they are of uneven sizes. So, there is a possibility that they might roll off and go here and there, but ensure that you plate it on the center of the plate and give it a good height. If you see some parsley specks on the side of the plate, what you do is you take a tissue paper and you wipe them off. When you wipe it off, it will ensure that the oil or the butter which is there will not spread across the plate, and at the same time the parsley is also removed from the plate, so it does not look tacky. This is your parsley potato which is ready. So, this is our menu for today: the minestrone, the eggs Florentine and the parsley potato. The egg Florentine needs to be had properly with all the 3 layers, that is the cheese sauce, the eggs and the spinach at the bottom layer. The egg yolk needs to be runny. That is an indication that the eggs Florentine have cooked properly. This is how you are supposed to have an egg Florentine. So, that was our first menu for semester 1. As you saw, that minestrone, egg Florentine and parsley potatoes are quite a simple dish to make. I request each and every one of you to start and try making these dishes at home, because the simple reason being, these are the basic ingredients that is available throughout. If by some chance you don't get any ingredients for the minestrone, you can replace it with the ingredients which are locally available. That is the beauty of this dish. So, if you have any doubts regarding the dishes that were made, regarding any recipes, we will be sending you the recipes across obviously, but then still if you have any doubts regarding the same, you can drop in a mail, okay, and then we will respond to you in that mail. So, if you want to know any substitutes, any alternates, then we will reply to you on that mail, and then we will go ahead with it.